Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our 7th annual meeting. We are so excited to have you back with us today. My name is Allison West, and I am the Associate Director of HARC, and I am going to start us off by just providing a very brief overview of our agenda for today, and then we'll head right into our first session. So today we are going to begin with a panel presentation describing HARC's progress over the past year and our vision for the future. Then we'll have another round of discussion breakouts where you can once again choose the conversation that interests you most. We'll then have a 15-minute break, and then you'll have a choice of 2 concurrent research presentations, and then we'll come back together for closing remarks. So with that, we are going to roll right into our first panel. And in this panel, we have 5 speakers addressing 5 important topics, including data sharing and interoperability, building the precision paradigm, emerging home visiting research priorities and issues, mentoring early career researchers, and a vision for a dynamic network. So I am now going to turn it over to Nicole Sternfels at James Bell Associates, who is going to address our first topic. Nicole, handing it over to you.
All right, thank you, Allison. So I know I have 10 minutes to do a crash course of our data sharing and interoperability and kind of HARC's vision for the future around this area and how we can promote data sharing and interoperability through partnerships. So just a couple of definitions that I'll be using for the presentation so we can all be on the same page. Data sharing in this context really means data exchange between 2 or more organizations. When we talk about metadata, we're looking at the characteristics of data, so data that describes data. And then for data exchange standards, this is a graphical representation of data specifying properties, structures, and interrelationships. So I'll highlight this when I get to the slide that talks about exchange standards. And exchange standards set the stage for interoperability. And so this is the capability for an automatic exchange of content or data, in this case, between devices, networks, or systems without human intervention. So why is data sharing important? Because data sharing and interoperability, we know that data burden is high for home visitors, local implementing agencies, and families. And data sharing and interoperability can reduce the number of times that families complete basic demographic information. And collecting this basic family information once and sharing it across programs can improve data quality, such as accuracy and completeness. We know that using data standards can ensure consistent meeting across various data sets, and combining data across programs and agencies can allow for different questions to
Nicole,
still hear me?
You're back.
I don't know what happened. Okay, we know that sharing information around a family screening and our assessment results can resent the need for multiple assessments to be done by different care providers, and in some cases, decrease secondary trauma from families having to repeat information to multiple care providers. The shared data can allow for easier reporting and interpretation of data, since it's based upon agreed upon terms. So data sharing can make data dashboards possible, and these dashboards can show progress on shared goals among partners within the early childhood system of care. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about what we learned from the MOZ project. You may have heard about this earlier in the meeting, and we aim to build home visiting models capacity for collaborative research by sharing existing MIS data to answer key questions. So during the 2-year project, we learned that models' high-priority questions often include concepts that were not captured in the management information systems. And when we rely on the MIS data alone, this limits the models that are able to participate in collaborative studies using existing data. And finally, we realized that there was a need for a common language or data standards across all models. So how does informatics play into precision research? So there are 3 layers in informatics, and the top layer is the knowledge model, which is where you see the precision paradigm, which is also known as an ontology, and it provides the necessary framework and language to advance precision research. The middle layer is the information model, and this expresses how constructs and relationships between them are defined and operationalized. And the information model really is the data exchange standard, so it depicts these various relationships between concepts and data. And the bottom layer is the common data model. So this is where you harmonize content or structures of multiple databases into a common structure. And so this middle layer or information model really bridges the gap between the ontology and the concepts and the data. Ontologies allow researchers to combine existing data more easily across models, states, and localities to realize studies with large sample sizes of families and programs that provide adequate power for multi-level modeling and other multivariable techniques. And further, it facilitates systematic reviews for learning across studies. So how are we planning to advance home visiting data sharing and interoperability? We hope to build on existing partnerships with home visiting models, state evaluators, and researchers, and develop partnerships with families. So we plan to establish a data collaborative, which would include models that have the most sophisticated MIS systems, and then states to be able to expand the number of models that are available to participate in collaborative research, since some states have expanded MISs for more models. We plan to build on the data sharing plan, so from the MODS project, and this includes membership, governance, and policies and procedures for a data collaborative. HARC will provide technical support for this project, so we'll be the data broker for the use case. So use case is just a pilot or a proof of concept to demonstrate function and workflow of the data collaborative. And we would construct data exchange standards related to the use case. So based on the question that we choose to investigate across models and within the collaborative, we'll be creating that middle layer, those data exchange standards, that depiction of the relationship between the data available and then the concepts from the precision paradigm. And we're hoping to focus on a question around context. So how does context vary across local programs in terms of family and community attributes that might moderate family engagement and impacts on outcomes? And then finally, we can use the information model to identify synergies and gaps in available data. So this helps clarify what data is needed to measure the information that we're interested in. And of course, there will be challenges along the way. Some things we learned from the MODS project are that there will be data sharing hurdles, including data security and privacy laws. Various models have proprietary information, and then also making sure we have consent from caregivers and also permissions from models and states to access and utilize the data. With data sharing, especially with management information system data, there is a lot of context that needs to be provided for the data. So how data is collected from local agencies and how frequently it's updated, and also when variables change over time, we'll need that information from staff at the national models or staff within state agencies. And then also the time it takes to provide data files can be time consuming. Another challenge is the data linkages and harmonization. So thinking about how to combine data across these disparate sources. And there are just limitations. And we know from the MODS project in creating the data layer that there are known limitations around this that we'll have to work through. And I think that is the end of my slides. A little crash course in what we're planning to do in HARC to advance data sharing and interoperability.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Because this presentation in particular, and the next one as well, do contain a lot of challenging concepts or new concepts, we thought we would pause here and just see if there are any burning questions or comments. We will have more time for questions and answers at the end of the hour, but any really burning questions that folks would like to ask right away. And feel free to put them in the chat or take yourselves off mute as well. Okay. Well, if not, make note of them, and you'll have more time at the end of the session. But if not, I think then we're going to turn it over to the next presentation, which is going to be Lori Burrell at Johns Hopkins, who's going to talk a little bit about our work building the precision paradigm. Lori?
Yeah, thank you, Allison. On behalf of my colleague, Kara Spinoza, and the entire HARC team here at Johns Hopkins University, I'm really excited to be sharing some updates on HARC's progress in building the precision paradigm over the past year. So our goal in building out the precision paradigm is to specify each component seen here fully, clearly, and completely. And we're doing so through activities with a wide variety of partners, including intervention researchers, national models, state leads, local program staff, and families being served by home visiting. Input from these varied partners will help us to create readily accessible and easily understandable resources to build the field's capacity for home visiting precision research. Over the past year, we have been focused on identifying theories of behavior and behavior change that are relevant to home visiting, intervention development, and evaluation. Additionally, we're engaged in activities to build out a list of mechanisms of action. Mechanisms of action are the processes through which an intervention influences target behaviors and can be conceptualized as constructs within theories. So in this presentation today, I will detail our methods and initial findings for the work that we've completed to date in these two areas. It is also important to note our work in building out the paradigm will be done with a focus on these 5 specific outcome areas for families: child development, maternal psychosocial functioning, maternal and infant cardiovascular health, birth outcomes, and family economic well-being. We chose these outcome areas for several reasons. First, all 5 of these outcome areas relate to MICV program outcome priorities. We also chose outcomes that are priorities for home visiting and that align with other federal initiatives, such as the Child Health Bureau's Accelerate Upstream Together, NHLBI's Enrich program, and the MICV program's collaborative state evaluations. The first group of experts that we called upon to help us inform the elements of the precision paradigm were intervention researchers. We identified and recruited intervention researchers with expertise in at least one of the 5 priority outcome areas. We invited researchers from within our HARC network and identified additional researchers through literature reviews, peer nominations, and review of current NIH-funded projects. A total of 116 intervention researchers agreed to participate in activities to build and refine the components of the precision paradigm. Nearly all intervention researchers have experience in designing or evaluating interventions, and nearly 3/4 have current or past involvement in home visiting research. About 2/3 indicated child development as their primary or secondary outcome area of focus, followed by maternal psychosocial functioning, cardiovascular health, birth outcomes, and economic self-sufficiency. Let's start with what we've accomplished to date in compiling theories. So an underlying assumption of this work is that home visiting quality and outcomes can be improved if intervention developers, implementers, and researchers ground their work in explicit theory. To establish a list of potential useful theories, we conducted 2 online surveys with intervention researchers. Our first survey focused specifically on theories of behavior change. And so these are theories that seek to explain when, why, and how a behavior does or does not occur, and the important sources of influence to be targeted in order to alter that behavior. So through a systematic review of the literature, we initially identified a list of 119 theories of behavior and behavior change. 3 members of the HARC research team independently reviewed each theory for inclusion in the survey, and then through team consensus, we arrived at a final list of 48 theories. We excluded theories from this first survey if they operated at the community level only, if they were grand or explanatory theories of behavior, personality, or development, or if they explicitly focused on behaviors or interventions outside the context of home visiting. This first theory survey was completed by 85 of our intervention researchers and included the 48 selected theories of behavior change. Respondents rated each theory on familiarity, quality, and relevance to home visiting. What did we find? So of the 48 theories of behavior change, only 15 of them were familiar to more than half of researchers in one or more of the 5 outcome areas. Of those 15, 12 were rated by the intervention researchers as being high quality, and 11 were rated as relevant for home visiting research. 10 theories were rated both high quality and relevant, and these 10 theories were shown in the pink panel on the right. Our job next will be to synthesize and distill key information about these theories and to curate the content of materials and resources to promote an ease of use across diverse partners. The second theory survey focused on the general or explanatory theories of behavior. So we identified a list of 69 theories, and we started with those that we excluded from the first survey because they were more general or explanatory. And then we added theories mentioned in Home V as underpinning home visiting models. And we included theories of behavior that were mentioned by researchers in the first survey. And again, through research team review and consensus, we arrived at a final list of 34 theories for inclusion in the second survey. From the second survey, we excluded theories if they were explaining personality traits or other non-modifiable characteristics, if they were related to behaviors outside the context of home visiting, or if they operated at the community level only. And again, similar to that first survey, respondents rated each theory on familiarity, quality, and relevance to home visiting. And so this theory was just recently completed by 55 researchers, and analyses are ongoing. Next, I'll share what we've accomplished to date with mechanisms of action. So as I mentioned earlier, mechanisms of action, which I'll call MOAs, are the processes through which an intervention influences target behaviors. So for example, an intervention might influence an individual's change in a target behavior by improving a particular skill or by strengthening an individual's belief that they're able to successfully carry out the behavior. So we started with a list of 26 MOAs and their definitions from the work of Susan Mickey and her colleagues at the Human Behavior Change Project. And they derived this list of 26 MOAs from the most commonly occurring theoretical constructs from over 100 theories of behavior and behavior change. 73 of our intervention researchers completed a 1-hour survey in Qualtrics to evaluate these 26 MOAs. Respondents rated each MOA on 4 criteria: the clarity of the label and definition, the uniqueness, and the relevance for home visiting. And so what did we find with this survey? So here you'll see a list of all 26 MOAs. And as you can see by the check marks in the first 2 columns of the table, nearly all MOAs were rated by most researchers as having clear labels and as relevant to home visiting. MOA definition, clarity, and uniqueness were a little bit more problematic. Check marks in the far right columns of the table indicate the 15 MOAs that were rated by most researchers as having clear definitions, and the 13 rated as being unique, or in other words, not overlapping with other MOAs. Some MOAs on this list were reported as overlapping more often than others. And so, for example, each of these MOAs with a red marker had over 60 mentions of overlap with other MOAs. 6 of the MOAs on this list were rated as clear, unique, and relevant. So they met all 3 criteria. And so you can, or 4 criteria, and you can see them highlighted here in blue. And so our next task for MOAs is to make the labels and definitions clear so that their uniqueness is really apparent. And this is just a starting off point. And so there's a good bit of work left to be done to make this taxonomy of MOAs usable. Intervention researchers have expressed positive feedback on our processes for building the precision paradigm, as well as some real excitement about being included in the process. So here are some sentiments that were common across the surveys that we've conducted to date. What's next? Using findings and feedback from our data collection efforts to date, our team is currently developing technical assistance resources for our website, starting with those 10 theories of behavior change that I mentioned earlier. And we are revising the MOA taxonomy to resolve those issues of clarity and overlap. And we're analyzing data from the most recent survey on theories of behavior. Surveying intervention researchers to build out these and other parts of the precision paradigm is really just the beginning. We are also currently developing methods to elicit input on these theories and mechanisms of action from a broader group of those with a vested interest in home visiting, including the national models, local program leaders, and home visiting staff. And lastly, our partners at James Bell Associates are planning activities to define features of the context component of the precision paradigm. And so as we continue to elicit feedback and refine components of the precision paradigm, we will make our methods, results, and user-friendly resources available on our website to promote and enable quality precision home visiting research. More detailed findings from the surveys that I briefly discussed today are currently available on the website. And we are also excited about some upcoming improvements to the HARC website that will make these materials easier to access and understand. We encourage you to stay up to date on our progress by visiting our website, hvresearch.org. And thank you. And now I think I'll turn it back to Allison West.
Thanks so much, Lori. That was a lot of information to synthesize and convey in a short amount of time, and you did so very well. I'm sure it is all just sinking in for folks. I'm continually amazed by the high participation rate, which I think is just fabulous, and I think it was really helpful to see some of the researchers' comments as well. But I'm going to pause here one more time and see if folks have comments or questions about Lori's presentation before we move on. And feel free to take yourselves off of mute. I may not be able to see you if your hand is raised because there are so many people in the meeting. So either put a question in the chat or take yourself off mute. Okay, well, once again, we will let all of that information sink in, and we'll certainly have time for more questions at the end of this session. Thank you so much, Lori. Okay, so I'm wearing multiple hats today, and I am up next. So I am now going to share my screen and talk a little bit about identifying and addressing emerging issues. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. All right, so I think it goes without saying why it is important to identify and address emerging issues. Home visiting has been around for a long time, and yet the context in which services are delivered has changed and continues to change dramatically. And research and evaluation play critical roles in understanding, supporting, and strengthening home visiting service delivery. The last 2 years in particular have taught us that we must develop research agendas that are nimble and responsive to the context in order to deliver knowledge that is relevant and useful for informing practice and policy. This includes not only observational research to understand the context and implementation research to understand current practice, but also research on promising innovations to address emerging issues. Although home visiting models and programs vary in characteristics such as size, model, geography, funding, workforce, and population served, they still have a lot of shared challenges, and addressing these shared challenges can help improve collective performance. I have here on the slide just a couple of examples of ways in which HARC has helped address emerging challenges in the past year since we last met. As one example, we conducted a series of surveys of network members nationally to understand the early and continued impacts of COVID-19, and then shared results in briefs and on our website. HARC also partnered with 6 national home visiting models to co-design a web-based survey and focus groups to gauge home visitors' familiarity with public benefits, such as those provided through the American Rescue Plan, and their experience assisting families to understand and access those benefits. Moving forward, we are eager to actively engage all interested parties to identify emerging issues and learn how we can help support and facilitate research to address them. For example, we know there is a need to better understand how COVID-19 impacted family stress, and child development, and how home visiting might play a role in mitigating negative consequences. COVID-19 also created opportunities for natural experiments and opportunities for research to inform how the field moves forward with virtual visiting. The pandemic also forced us to confront long-standing inequities and highlighted the need to better understand what role home visiting can play in addressing those inequities, including how to ensure equitable home visiting access and outcomes for families, and how to center equity in the questions we ask and the methods we use to conduct research and evaluation. The pandemic also shone a light on workforce issues, and in particular, the need for evidence regarding what works in recruiting, retaining a healthy and competent workforce. These are only a few emerging issues, however, and we know that you are all aware of many, many more. And this is why we look forward to partnering with all of you to identify and address emerging issues moving forward. So how will we do it? First and foremost, through frequent and ongoing engagement with all of you, including researchers, practitioners, practitioner researchers, model representatives, state and tribal leads, funders, TA providers, families, communities, really any and all whose interests could be advanced through sound research. Some ways we will do this are through periodic surveys of our membership to identify emerging issues that are bubbling up from the field, and in particular from the front lines. Also by facilitating introductions and opportunities for collaborative research. After all, each and every one of us in this meeting has something to contribute and something to learn. We will also do this by creating opportunities to engage with and from scholars from different fields and backgrounds who have different types of expertise. And finally, by synthesizing and disseminating new research and funding opportunities so that all can benefit through a combination of push, pull, and interactive communication strategies, such as newsletters, briefs, webinars, social media, podcasts, and special topic meetings. We know there will be challenges. First of all, we need to be able to identify emerging issues quickly. Critical to this work is the need to engage and integrate the perspectives of everyone who is affected by or stands to benefit from the work, one of the hallmarks of precision home visiting. In particular, we need to do a better job identifying emerging issues that are important to frontline providers and families. We know this is possible through meaningful collaborations with all of you in our network. To be clear, our goal is not to do this ourselves, but to facilitate, coordinate, lend support, and pass the baton to those of you who have the relevant expertise to address these issues well. We also need efficient study designs that will produce new knowledge quickly, another hallmark of precision home visiting. And finally, we need to share findings quickly to promote rapid translation into practice and in ways that make it easy for practitioners and frontline providers to learn about new developments that matter to them. We hope you will join the conversation. And in fact, immediately after this session, we invite you to a breakout discussion on this topic, in which we hope you will share your ideas about how we can do this well. Meanwhile, I am now going to turn it over to Deb Darrow, who is going to be talking about mentoring the next generation of research. So Deb, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Allison. All right. All right, I'm going to talk about mentoring now that I have the slides. So why is this important to mentor? It'd be nice if I could mentor with a computer, that would help. This is a specific activity HARC is undertaking to really build and to reach out and to create a more diverse group of researchers doing this work. Why do we think this is important? Because all professions and all endeavors benefit from bringing in new perspectives and new ways of learning. We know that the home visiting field is expanding, and it's going to require us ever more to look over the fence to see who's doing what, how can we learn from other entities, and what are the range of, as Allison just outlined, the interpersonal, organizational, and contextual issues that challenge our work. We know that home visiting will benefit from a pool of researchers that express greater diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, and lived experience. For too long, I think we've drawn from a few disciplines, a few people that we thought had expertise. We know we need to widen the tent. And then finally, I think we all have a collective obligation to open doors and to extend offers of assistance to those that are coming behind. I myself will say that when I was a young researcher just starting out, I was blessed by a number of mentors. that offered me a place at the table, and we want to continue to do that for others. So who are we looking for to do this work? Well, we want both emerging scholars and mentors that have strong technical skills and are committed to quality and appropriate practice. We want people that are inquisitive, people that aren't satisfied with what they know, but simply always want to know something more, to use the challenges we face in building more effective responses to the families we want to serve. We want people that share HARC's commitment to really learning from others, both within our own, in and out of our own discipline, and in and out of our own field of practice. And we want researchers who understand the importance of working with practitioners and families in realizing that there's a diverse way of knowing how to move forward. And we want to really engage these citizen researchers, if you will. I know Allison called them practitioner researchers. I think they're really citizen researchers, people that have learned a good deal about what they know they need to help their kids. We want to include them in our efforts. And we want to train a group of researchers that know how to do that, that know how to put the pieces together. So how will we do our work? Well, first, we're going to start by leveraging HARC's existing network and reach out and help you all work with us in identifying candidates that we might be able to bring along. We're going to look first, and we're going to look in 3 pools: doctoral candidates, people that are being currently mentored by HARC members, early career professionals, and academics in other research, in academic or other research settings. You all are working with people that have just started their job. Those are the people we want to engage in advancing their commitment and engagement in the field of home visiting research. And also we want to look at those researchers that are working in public, state and federal agencies that also are solid researchers. We want to make sure they feel part of our team. We want to establish a diverse cohort of early career scholars, individuals that can not just we work with, but will work with each other. And this peer-to-peer learning is so important in this concept of advancing your career. Just because you're older, just because you have experience, doesn't mean you're the wisest person in the room. And very often we find that peers are very good at helping their colleagues deal with issues and advance their work. And then finally, we're going to develop and implement a mentoring model that will not only link emerging scholars with senior leaders in the field, but that will also be a vehicle through which we can support those mentors in their work, so they don't feel they're doing it on their own. Let's see. We know we can't do this work alone, and we need to partner with others. We're going to partner with the Child Wellbeing Research Network that's sponsored by the Doris Duke Fellows, a program that I started several years ago, and now where the fellows themselves have matured in their own field and they're helping their colleagues along. We want to draw on some of that energy. We're going to be joint planning with the professional societies that are spending a good deal of time nurturing professionals within their own discipline: SRCD, APA, APHA, and SPR, and I'm sure there are many others. We want to work jointly with foundations. We want that are investing in early career scholars. We want them to know about our work, and we want our emerging scholars to know about the resources that these foundations offer, sometimes directly to emerging scholars, but often through a variety of academic institutions. And then finally, we want to partner with other existing networks that are focusing on building a more diverse and inclusive pool of researchers. The RISER network, the folks that are doing the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center, and the Hispanic Institute at Child Trends. So what are we going to produce with all this effort? Well, we want to at least have establish a knowledge base that'll highlight the priorities and concerns of this emerging scholar group. Doesn't matter much what I think or what the HARC leadership team thinks. It really matters what the folks that are starting their career in this field, what are the issues that they're facing? What are the concerns they have? What are the questions they'd like to have answered? We need to identify and support a cadre of volunteer mentors who'll be able to share their expertise with emerging scholars. We want to create a series of webinars, podcasts, other opportunities where we can address the critical issues that emerging scholars are facing. We want to enhance our networking opportunities, both at HARC meetings, which one day we may all gather in person again, but also at other meetings where we find ourselves, so that emerging scholars will know there are other home visiting researchers attending these meetings that are there to reach out and set up conversations with them. And then we want to document the lessons we learned from this and apply that to all the other work that HARC undertakes. So as with all new initiatives, there's some challenges that we're going to face. First, sometimes people think home visiting research is often a narrow platform. So how could it possibly support someone in career development? We think we need to expand the notion of all the questions that home visiting needs to answer in order to do its work better. And that's beyond what goes on in the individual home visiting program, but also as it extends to those contextual issues that we know impacts families and impacts our practice. We need to create a sufficient pool, sufficient support for emerging scholars within their own home institutions. Sometimes young folks, emerging scholars do face issues in their institution. We want to be able to see if we can help provide them information on how to overcome those. We know that we're going to need a large number of mentors and we may not have them, but we're hoping that through our continued outreach effort, you'll join with us and share your learnings with those that are coming down the pike. Generating a strong funding base. We can raise a lot of questions, but if no one wants to fund them, then it's going to really get in the way of someone's career development. We're going to work with people to make sure that when people have resources available, that they know that home visiting is an important strategy to invest those resources in learning more. And then finally, creating a rich and generative learning environment, an environment that not only welcomes conversations on difficult issues, but encourages those conversations. I think in that way, we can help everyone learn from each other. It's not a one-way street. I'm sure that any mentor that signs up for this program is going to find they're going to learn as much from their mentee as they're able to offer their mentors. Thanks. And again, we're going to have another session, just like Allison mentioned. People can talk more about how to do this work, who we can draw on, and most importantly, we'll offer to volunteer to help.
Thanks so much, Deb. Again, a lot of information, and I think I'm going to take moderator's prerogative and ask if there are any burning questions now. And of course, we'll be able to answer more questions after John's presentation. Any comments or questions?
Could I make a couple comments? This is Anne.
Sure.
Okay. So two things. I wanted to expand on what you referred to as practitioner researchers and what Deb referred to as citizen researchers. You know, we're shifting our definitions, our concept of what constitutes a solid research team. And what that means is partnering in a different way beyond what you might call traditional researchers. And none of us are born knowing how to do that. So what do we need? We need, as part of this mentoring, training and resources and the development of shared understanding and solid methods to build the skills of traditional researchers in working with what I'll call non-traditional researchers. The second thing is that we need mentoring of the non-traditional researchers. Now, we haven't focused on that Deb didn't focus on that in this particular talk, but I wanted to mention that it's part of the scope of what we're doing. And an example of what I have in mind, Darius is probably on this call, is the training that he developed with PCORI funding in one cooperative agreement, and that he's now disseminating through a current cooperative agreement. So my point is just to make note of that wider scope, while also making certain that perhaps in this discussion we focus on the more traditional, as Deb has done. The last thing I'll mention is that over the past few months we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, including many in academic settings. And I was really struck by those who are actually mentors already, who said, you know, I feel a little isolated. I have a postdoc, or I have a doctoral student, or whomever, but I'm kind of doing this on my own, and it really would be great if there was some way to connect with others. And I see this work on this objective as being a home for activities to address that need that became apparent to me in the conversations. Was that one comment? There are no more comments from me.
Thanks, Anne. That's great, actually. And Anne, your comments really resonate with me as someone who is now entering the role of a mentor and realizing it is not easy. We don't come to the role with these skills just innately knowing them. Maybe some people do, but I do not. And there's a lot to be learned and learn from others. So I get excited thinking about having some supports along those lines. So thanks for that, for those comments. On that note, I'm now going to turn it over to John Korfmacher, who is now at Chapin Hall, new role for John, and he is going to be talking about a vision for a dynamic network. All yours, John.
All right. Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. Tell me if otherwise. Let me share my screen. Now, let me make sure. Like Deb, I'm just going to talk this out loud. All right. Is it my slideshow right now?
Mhm.
Great. Oops. Oh, you saw the big candy. I'm going to talk about our vision for a dynamic network, as Allison just mentioned. From the beginning, a core feature of HARC has been our practice-based research network, or PBRN. This is a way to bring programs and researchers together like a delicious Reese's peanut butter cup, or PBC. PBRNs, not PBCs, come from health services research. And in a very traditional sense, a PBRN is a network of individual clinical practices who can suggest and participate in research studies on topics that they're interested in. It's a way for individual practices to be part of something bigger and feel connected to emerging trends in the field. And although traditional PBRN links practices to researchers, HARC made an early decision to ask researchers to join as members as well, which is done more rarely. And we also recruited local network leads to participate so that they could have programs within their network be made aware of studies that we were conducting. And we added McVie state leads. And candy experts might have noticed, these are not just ordinary peanut butter cups pictured here, they are the big cups. Our PBRN is national in scope. We currently have 269 individual programs listed as members, but the 84 state and local networks also contribute many hundreds of additional programs. And as you can see, we're well distributed across the US, although there are some pockets of non-engagement. I still don't know what's happening with Wyoming. I do not have this reported here, but our programs represent both evidence-based and promising practices, including homegrown home visiting models that are not connected with the national office. We have good representation across programs serving urban, rural, and suburban families, across size of programs, and those that do and do not have McVie funding. We have about 1,800 local programs that have taken part in at least one of our studies. Our membership includes 19 programs that involve 19 evidence-based home visiting models, 16 of which have had a program take part in at least one study. And 5 of those evidence-based models have had their national office participate in a partnering role or as collaborators or co-authors in our studies. So this represents.
You're muted.
You lost
Yes,
your audio. Okay.
Yeah, somehow the host muted me.
Sorry about that, John.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I offended everybody and you felt the need to push the mute button on me. So what we have here are projects where we directly recruited through our member network. And so we've had 25 studies that have engaged HARC members. Any proposed study does get reviewed by our council, which is made up of researchers, program directors, and federal officers. 4 of those projects are seed pilot projects that have been funded by us, that researchers competed for, that were focused on elements of precision home visiting. 2 of those studies on trauma-informed care and on father engagement have briefs up on our website. The other 2 are in process. We were one of the first groups to provide a snapshot regarding how the home visiting field was responding to COVID through a rapid response survey that we conducted 2 years ago. Its results in a follow-up survey are summarized in briefs, also up on our website. And we also have 2 toolkits on our website that were developed with the help of HARC members. Our newest is the Responsive Partnership Toolkit on home visiting communication practices. It was just launched last month and we're very excited about it. I encourage you to check it out. And all of this was done with the time and effort of our very cool HARC network members. So that is where we have been, but there is so much more that we know that we can do. And I've listed 4 things here that we're proposing. First, there's a lot that we don't know about our members, partly because our intake survey was kept deliberately short to make signing up for the network as easy as possible. So we need to know more about them to understand better who they are. Second, we want to recruit new members. There are just so many home visiting programs in the US, and we represent just a fraction of them. So there's a lot of room for us to grow in that area alone, but we also want to expand who we bring in as members. There are important players in the home visiting sector, as we've been talking about, whom HARC connects with, but for whom we have not created formal pathways to be part of our network. That's just silly. We would like to create membership categories for program models, for policy folks, for funders, and we would like to invite and involve families, the most important and in many ways the most elusive collaborator. And third, we want to increase member engagement in HARC activities. People right before me in this last hour have talked about some of these strategies already, but we want more communication, more regular heartbeat surveys. We want to create mentorship opportunities for new scholars. We also want to expand our HARC Council to include more members who can be part of the review for studies that come down our path. And then one specific engagement strategy is the development of special interest or affinity groups based on such things as early career status, ethnic or cultural background, lived experiences, specific areas of research interest, and so forth. These groups should be run by members, even if they're sponsored by us. And so this is one area where we really need member feedback. What should be the focus of these groups? How can we maximize networking opportunities? What would make them most appealing? What roles can members play? This is where we really need your input to make this successful. Why is this important? It's important because PBRNs have, they've traditionally been a fairly passive experience for members. And we were initially counseled to take this approach, get as many people to sign up, don't make it hard for them. When studies come down, they'll decide whether or not to engage in them. And that's, and that's kind of it. But we have better defined our mission. And it's become more clear to us that this passive experience can only go so far in moving the field forward. We need to be thinking more of partnerships, of reciprocal communication, more active engagement of our members. And we need to have a more inclusive sense of who fits under our umbrella. This is something Deb just noted, but the field is expanding and we need to make sure that we are connecting with as wide a range as possible of people invested in the service system and who can contribute insights to its effectiveness. As Anne often likes to quote, to go farther, we have to go together. And so you've heard from others in this hour what HARC wants to do to move the field forward. I'm arguing here that our network is what is needed for this to be successful, that it is the bedrock for what we are proposing. And we're proposing a lot. We're not so arrogant as to think that we can do it alone. And it really is our collective effort that matters. And so how we make the gears turn in this network is very important. So I've listed some of the things that we can do to help build and improve upon our work. I noted we need a better understanding of who's participating in it. So we're gonna, our intake survey, purposefully short. We're missing crucial details about our programs, our researchers, our partners, including background information that can be used to help highlight diversity issues that we need to address. We need to focus on underrepresented states, communities, and models. We did make a push for this a few years ago and we had some success, but I think we can do a lot better. To create a more dynamic network, we want to reach out and connect with others who have done this and done this well. Deb mentioned a number of these groups. I have some of them repeated here. Professional societies that do have special interest in affinity groups, other consortiums and groups where home visiting folks congregate, including McVie and ACF sponsored activities. And as Allison noted, we want to use Heartbeats, our fast emerging issues surveys, to quickly gather and disseminate member feedback. So we want to make this more of a regular part of our operations. Of course, there are challenges we must be aware of. Why would you think otherwise? First, bringing in more diverse members demands more mindfulness of how we communicate. We want to make sure our language is clear and our message is relevant, and we're not being too filled with jargon or overly academic terms. That's hard for us researchers, but we're going to work very hard on it. We don't want engagement to simply mean more emails. We've all had the experience of sign up regret. We can't be that message that makes people hit unsubscribe. So the communications need to be helpful and meaningful. And related to this, we want members to feel a sense of ownership. A dynamic network depends upon members having a role and a relationship with each other rather than just being passive recipients of information. But as we give members more responsibility and more to do, we as researchers have to fight our natural inclination towards wanting to control all the variables. Engaging the community involves giving more people say in what we do. This messiness is part of life and we need to embrace it. And finally, one advantage of more passive networks is that they are less expensive. Creating infrastructure for a vibrant member community and worthwhile opportunities for participation takes resources, which we will be seeking out. I'm imagining a lot of bake sales. That is really the most kind of, isn't that the most collaborative way to raise money? I don't want to end on these challenges. So, I know these are all challenges we can address. In the precision paradigm, change happens when home visiting services can address mechanisms of action, in particular, those that relate to motivation, opportunity, and capability or capacity. And despite the challenges that I just mentioned, we are excited about what we can accomplish and the potential power that our network has to really move the needle in home visiting. Our precision paradigm and other strategies discussed in this meeting and strategies that we will discover together, those will allow us to build capacity. We are motivated by our experiences these past years to work together, and our network provides the opportunity for such partnering. So I'm inviting all of you to join HARC on this adventure, or at least join our discussion group that's coming up in a few. We want to know, what are your ideas for building this network? There are so many brain cells out there, and there's so much that we can learn together. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say and for what is in store for us. And I'll just end by saying we all are the cool kids. So thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Well, this is great. We have, I think, about 5 minutes for questions. And while you're queuing those up, and I do see one in the chat, I did just want to mention that these are really some highlights of HARC's work. There is so much going on, and one in particular I wanted to give a shout out to was just some more work that's going on around building the paradigm, and in particular focusing on context in the context box and making sure that we are building the paradigm using an equity lens. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. But meanwhile, I see a question, maybe a couple questions in the chat. Yes, from Morgan. What are the different channels through which early career researchers will be able to join this network or advocate for themselves to join? May have missed this at the beginning. Oh, thanks so much for that question. Deb, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think people should feel free to self-identify early on. Once HARC moves into its new work plan, we'll be sending outreach information to people to tell them to pass on their name to us, and for our members to send in the name of the young scholars they're working with in their own institutions. We'll probably host a welcoming webinar to explain people more the process of what we're doing. And you can start by coming to the discussion section after this session and brainstorm with us even more ways in which we can reach out to folks. But all should feel welcomed to come forward on their own if they're not currently mentoring with someone, or the colleagues they're working with are not current HARC members. You can self-advocate.
Thanks so much, Deb. And I like to think we're a pretty approachable, accessible bunch, so feel free to reach out. Any other questions?
I comment.
Okay.
So I know that I myself, when offered the opportunity to go into breakouts, I sometimes think, well, I don't know that I really have anything like really brainy to offer. But the reason for breakouts is not just for brainy answers to questions, but for really good questions that might go beyond what we ourselves have already thought of as possible challenges or issues to address and so on. And so good questions are also really, really welcome, and they accelerate the pace at which we're able to get our thinking into high gear on how to design the specifics for each of those three areas. So just like, the question from Morgan, actually, I was pretty impressed at Deb's ability to answer that. I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know. So at any rate, but I imagine in a breakout room, there might be people who have answers to even expand on what Deb is saying. So both the questions and ideas are valuable.
And I would just add to that, there are no bad questions. A lot of us are coming to this from other fields, and we are just getting to know home visiting, and we really want everyone here. Folks from other fields have so much to offer and teach us, just like home visiting can teach other fields. So there are no bad questions. Let's just all learn from each other. I think I saw, Don just added another point that early career researchers can join right now. That is true, by simply taking the intake survey on our website. So please go to the HARC website and join right away, and tell all your friends, like John said, be a cool kid and join HARC. All right. Well, with that, Jess Goldberg is asking a question. Do folks have to have a degree to be part of this? Absolutely not. We welcome everyone. Degrees, background does not matter. We are really, all are welcome. Everyone has expertise to offer. Please join.
I mean, for the mentorship though.
For the mentorship.
Program. Yeah.
You have to have 3 degrees to be a mentor. And you have to be 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
It's just gonna say.
But remember what we talked about. You need to be knowledge of the field. You need to have some experience. You need to be committed to doing quality research.
Got it.
There was nothing about degrees, but there are indeed some expectations.
I like it.
And that'll be that's a great jumping off point, Jess, for our next session, because we are going to have breakouts where we can delve into these issues even deeper and have further discussions about that.